Having departed Xīn de Qín early this morning, the martial artist come fitness instructor took all of his new pupils to the gym. I sit in Triple M's common room, observing the interactions between the now free human-owned pets and a small Gaelic woman. Jenny manages to work her head out from underneath Fluffy, where she was pinioned moments ago, and takes a deep inhale, suggesting that she either wasn't able to breathe, or was finding it difficult while burying it under Fuzz. "Enjoying yourself?" I asked with an amused smirk. "Immensely," answers the flushed woman, as Qing Long opens his mouth to playfully nibble her entire head with his sharp, vociferous teeth. The fact that she can have such a look of contentment on her face, while surrounded by such an enormous quantity of death-world predator, stands testament to her terranness.
"Also enjoying, new friend, such playing,"
yipped Sam, while resting with Quilong's tail. "A moat beast lying on top of you, a Shulong attempting to swallow your head, while your girlfriend's dog bravely attempts to rescue you. I guess you'd be pretty pleased by your current circumstances." I smirk at Jenny, who grins back. "Okay, Fluffy, I don't have your daddy's stamina. I'm a bit tired out now. Could you let me up?" she says with clear regret. Fluffy, seeming to understand some combination of Jenny's tone and the tap to the side she gave, raises the section of her body under which Jenny was immobilized, allowing her to get up and come to rest on the sofa, still clearly extremely satisfied. With no small human in their midst, Fluffy, Qing Long, and Sam give much more boisterous play. It's only the non-reaction of all Terrans present that keeps me from reading this as having devolved into a mortal bout. "That fiddle-off last night was pretty crazy, wasn't it?" Jenny addresses the room at large. Most present give noises of agreement. She is referring to the point in the party where Bayern and Dao Yuan discover that they were both players of similar stringed instruments, and so ran back to the ODR to fetch their violin and erhu, respectively, facilitating what I can only describe as a musical battle, the rules of which seem to be one player plays a tune and the other attempts to replicate it. Neither of them seemed to falter at any point, meaning that, I suppose, the contest was a draw. The whole thing was certainly impressive, but I'm afraid every Terran I meet is so impressive in one way or another, and every other instance I spend time among your species, something happens that my intuition tells me shouldn't be possible. I don't really have any frame of reference for how impressed I should be by that display last night." Hazuka nods. "I have to second that. You guys consider so many amazing talents to be mundane and routine things that anyone should be able to do that it's difficult to know what's impressive and why." Messiah chuckles. "Let me put it this way. If I live to 500 years old, I think I'll still be excitedly recalling the time to people that I watched an American spy reveal that he was also a virtuoso Celtic fiddler, then have a jam battle with a super centenarian Chinese kung fu master, virtuoso enthurist." All Terrans present give firm grunts of agreement, all except Dr. Mink, who just shoots a sidelong glance at him before looking away, seeming to be making a show of lack of interest. "Noted. Quite impressive then," I nod in response. Interjecting here, Krish asks Emiko, "Is Jay going to be alright in deck 3? I mean, with the amount of time that Master Yuan is going to be training a lot, she's effectively on her own with..." A look of concern passes over his face. "That guy. Wouldn't it have been better to put Ziva and Leon in there with him, rather than in Plus Ultra?" That latter directed at both me and Emiko. Emiko answers, "I wouldn't worry about it. She seemed very excited about the ability to interview him and learn about what life was like for him, with his unusual cultural background. Plus, Taquilla and I made it very clear to all the new hires that if they experience any issues with their dorm placement, they can come to us and we'll do our best to resolve them. Ideally, they'd have a dorm liaison, but, well, the obvious choice would be Master Yuan, except it doesn't seem as if he plans to spend much time there." Krish continues to look uncomfortable before saying, "Okay, she may not be unhappy with it, but doesn't the guy seem a bit creepy? What if, I don't know, what if he tries something?" Emiko nods with some sympathy before saying, "Mr. Dwan, your concern is admirable, however, entirely unwarranted. If he tried something, Miss Stone would be quite capable of picking him up and snapping him half over her knee." "Wait, really?" answers Krish, eyebrow raised in disbelief. "But he's a hunter, isn't he? And she's so..." "Heavy?" supplies Emiko. "Well, yeah," answers Krish, clearly uncomfortable for some reason. "Dr. Zimberry, would you give us all a little lesson on Denisovan anatomy and the mechanics of hybridization between lineages?" smiles Emiko. Messiah looks a little surprised to be addressed, but quickly collects himself. I suppose.
Denisovans diverged from Neanderthals around 450,000 years ago. There's around twice as much divergence as there is between us and southern and northern Caucasian, the two most divergent ethnic groups of Homo sapiens from everyone else. The evolutionary pressures of the plains and mountains of Central Asia happen to push them to a body plan that favors retention of fat, but they've got a comparable level of muscle underneath that fat to the average Neanderthal. Fran is certainly not representative of the typical Neanderthal, having a genetic condition that fails to inhibit the growth of muscle and bone density. But what is true is that average strength of the Neanderthal sits comfortably above us sapiens, with Denisovans much closer to the former than the latter. As to Miss Stone being half sapiens, that would actually be more inclined to edge her up rather than down, in terms of her strength and physical fitness. This is because the more divergent your parents' lineages are from each other, the less likely you are to inherit harmful recessive alleles from both parents, meaning that people of mixed parentage are typically healthier, fitter, stronger, and subjectively prettier. He looks back to Emiko with an expression that says, "Is there anything I left out?" "Thank you, Messiah, exactly. Denisovans and Denisovan hybrids might look cuddly, but you'd not want to pick a fight with one," she smiles. "Of course, as I'm sure you can tell, Mr. Nolganet is a hybrid as well, his maternal grandfather having been a Longi, but Longi, being sapiensoid, aren't known for their strength the way Neanderthaloids are. Additionally, his lifestyle has emphasized mobility, agility, stealth, and calorie conservation. Underneath that, admittedly unnerving coat, he's as skinny as a waif, nearly as slender as you are, Krish. If the two of them come to blows, my money would be on Miss Stone. Strange as that might sound." She thinks for a moment before adding, "I also don't think you should be so quick to condemn his personality on the strength of his creepiness. You owned up to Fran after all, didn't you?"
At this, Krish throws up his hands, conceding defeat. "All right, I'm sorry. I'll stop worrying about it. I didn't mean to impugn his honor or whatever."
Here, Hazuka slithers off the sofa and wraps herself around her boyfriend, giving him an affectionate kiss on the cheek before quipping, "If you white knight for ladies other than myself, my Oasis, you're liable to make me jealous, you know."
Krish chuckles before returning the kiss.
At this, Twilla whistles before hollering, "Get a room, you two," cupping her hands to her holographic mouth, despite the fact that her voice is projected from Jenny's holopad, making physical amplification both unnecessary and impossible.
"We have a room, it's across the hall," responds Krish, with a mirthful frown adorning his face, the 5 fingers of his right hand splayed, with the palm facing the ceiling in a gesture of incredulity.
"Use your room then," shoots back Twilla, not missing a beat, her mouth twisted into amusement at her own jest.
Hazuka here grips Krish's chest with her 2 thumbed hands, pressing his back against her front before preening over his shoulder.
"There's nothing wrong with a little PDA. I assume no one's grossed out by watching us kiss each other on the cheek."
A chuckle moves around the room, followed by a brief moment of quiet.
A moan that is broken by Jenny announcing, "Coming back to Jay and Taimancha, I think they're into each other." "What could possibly give you that idea?" asked Dr. Bink, skeptically, narrowing her feline eyes in suspicion. With a haughty smile, Jenny responds, "Just a bit of sixth sense I picked up. Going to uni on a garden ward or space station, I like to think I can smell attraction from anyone to anyone. Doesn't matter how subtle they are about it. It wasn't quite as obvious as Cuddles and Tooney or Cuckoo and Sue, but there was something there." "They sat across the table, 2 people apart, and didn't even glance at each other all night," ejects Mink. "Exactly. They didn't even glance at each other," says Jenny triumphantly. "If 2 people are sitting that close and don't look at each other, well, it means they're trying not to look. Can you think of another reason that you'd avoid looking at someone besides fancying them?"
"You might be embarrassed about something else, something unrelated. Perhaps they had an awkward moment before we were introduced," I suggest.
Jenny waggles her finger. "If it was something like that, they would have sat at opposite ends of the table. Is that close enough to admire each other through their peripheral vision? I think Daq Free's name is going to become Domus Amoris when they pick up a Latin name for it."
With a smug smile at that latter joke that required a extra little translation from normal for me to understand. "Here, I quip. I was planning to visit Plus Ultra and Daq Free after this, just to see how the new additions to both are finding it. Now I'm somewhat apprehensive. Given how embarrassing you Terrans find any exposure of your sexuality, I wonder that things might become awkward between myself, Miss Stone, and Mr. Nurglenet if Daq Free has, indeed, become a house of love."
Hazuka cocks her brow scouts and responds, "You're assuming that if Jenny's superstition is right, they wouldn't have the sense to move proceedings to behind one of their locked bedroom doors? Put up the privacy field?"
I chitter back. I do have experience with Terrans forgetting to put up privacy fields. The original Triple M's give nervous chuckles. Besides, I add, might it depend on, I don't know, how quickly things happen? If they assume they have the common room to themselves and one thing leads to another, they might not wish to break up proceedings to take things to a bedroom. True, interjects Jenny, with a finger extended, to acknowledge the validity of the point I just made. Sorry to interrupt, but, interrupts Mink. Why would you have been more likely to develop this sixth sense going to a garden-walled uni rather than a Terran one? That is what you're suggesting, isn't it? I'm glad you asked, smiles Jenny. You're right that Terrans are on the subtler side when it comes to displays of attraction. There are species with mating dances and coloured crests that they can't help but erect when someone catches their eye. But we aren't the subtlest. When you're in a mixed environment like that, you learn how to sort of broaden your radar, I suppose. You learn how to recognise when someone's behaviour deviates from normal for their species or themselves, and you get very good at just making the jump to inferring what that might mean. I think, anyway. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just born with it. With an affected preen at the latter. At this point, the common room door opens to reveal Shi Dao Yuan, his arms folded behind his back, his eyebrow cocked, his lips pursed into a wry smile. Yuan's pet uncalls himself from Fluffy, fast enough to cause a reproachful yowl, and whips across the room to reunite with his master. Did you make friends, Quinlong? Says the man, his smile softening as he pats the enormous head of his companion animal. A few moments of mutual appreciation later, he turns from his pet and tries to stand facing me. His pursed lips smile and cocked eyebrow returned. Problem, Master Yuan? I asked worriedly. Of a sort, yes. You see, I had just completed a training session with my new students and instructed that we were going to begin meditation. We got about 10 minutes into our session, when a very loud, very grating song about a family of sharks began to play over the PA. I'm sure you can appreciate that this may continue our meditation somewhat challenging. I'm informed you know something about this? At this point, Twiller begins a noisy fit of mischievous giggles. Leaning to look around the mildly irritated martial artist, I address her incredulously. You couldn't have warned me? Through her giggles, and even simulating being out of breath, she answers, I could have, Captain, but it would have been much less fun. I gave an irritable flap of my wings, coupled with an irritable chirp, before saying, Twiller, effective immediately, Victor Telly's restriction on gym usage is waived, so long as he is accompanied by Master Yuan.